Yo, what is up? This is JJ.
And this is Cherry.
And we're actually talking to you, actually not in our home in South San Francisco, but in our baby moon locally because of the coronavirus, COVID-19, here in Sausalito at Cavallo Point, right across Golden Gate Bridge.
And the photo that I just showed you was of both of us partying it up at our friend's wedding in Hawaii 7 months ago.
And little did we know that we were pregnant.
Yeah.
Tearing it up on the dance floor, drinking, smoking.
Mostly him. And today we're sharing our story of our pregnancy.
The reason why that we're sharing our story is because getting pregnant is actually hard.
So I'm 35 years old, turning 36, and he's 33 years old. And we've been trying for about 6 years, as long as we've been married, to actually get pregnant.
Nope.
So both of us obviously have been trying the natural way. That wasn't working. We tried something called IUI,
which is intrauterine insemination. That's where basically I jack off to a cup. So we tried many times as far as the natural way of getting pregnant, and obviously that didn't work. The whole counting, making sure, was that the cycles and figuring out when she's ovulating and whatnot.
Yeah.
That didn't work. And so we ended up looking into the first baby steps of artificial insemination, which is IUI, and that's intrauterine insemination. We did that 4 times, and then that didn't work.
And then we moved on to something called IVF. And that procedure is the one where it's a little bit, well, it is pricey, but that's kind of like your last ditch effort in trying to get pregnant. A very scientific method, but basically they take the male sperm and then they take the female egg, put it in a petri dish, let them mingle, and then see if you can actually get a fertilized egg from that.
And then from there, with a fertilized egg, they would be implanting that back into her hoo-ha. And then hopefully within, was it 2 weeks?
About.
You take a blood test, because you can't just pee on a pregnancy test, because all your hormones are actually changing, could potentially change and give you a false positive. And hopefully, and by then, you're pregnant. There's actually another procedure that we opted to not do prior to the IVF. And that procedure, for some reason, we can't name it right now, but I'm sure I'll just put it on the screen. And that procedure basically would have her take a bunch of more medications in which it would produce more eggs, so you would have a higher chance of getting pregnant. But that also increases the chances of having twins and triplets and maybe even quadruplets. And the reason why that we chose not to do that is because you run the risk of having complications during your pregnancy when you have multiple babies being born. And so it's just running the risk of all these complications, and we didn't want to do that. And if you were to get, say triplets and quadruplets, for example, because of that high risk, we would actually have to select which one would not go through. And so that was a very kind of an odd and, weird situation for us to be in if we chose that, because we've been trying to have kids, and so now at this point, if we were to have triplets, while that sounds really great, but with that higher risk attached to it, we would have to select which to not go forward. And so we opted to not do that, and then from there, skip to IVF.
Actually, it sucked big time in the very beginning when you're trying to get pregnant the regular way, because you're like, oh, everyone gets pregnant, right? But little do we know, it's like a 30% chance roughly. And all the optimum conditions have to be there. So after failing the natural way, going into IUI, failing again 4 times more, it was just utter despair, because we were pouring money into this now and it wasn't even working.
Well, to also backtrack a little bit as well, when you're trying to get pregnant and you're about to do these procedures, you typically, or rather you will take like a checkup. You're gonna figure out okay, is there anything wrong with you, or say your body, that's preventing you from getting pregnant? So for the guys, you do a semen check, figure out the motility, figure out the mobility, if that's the same thing. You figure out the count, just try to figure out if they're good swimmers or not. And then for the females.
Yeah, for females, for women, what they normally do to get checked up is that they need to do blood tests to check hormone levels, and then they also do scans, multiple scans of your belly and your reproductive system to make sure that the structures are working appropriately. So that takes probably a couple of weeks or so for results to come back.
But at the end of it, she was fine and I'm fine. So what they call that is, it's one of those things where like, it would be better to know that you couldn't get pregnant because you literally can't pin it down to one thing.
Infertility of undetermined causes.
And that's what it's called. And that's what we had. So moving forward from IUI, we skipped that second procedure. Name will flash here again as far as what that is. And so we are now moving on to IVF, in vitro fertilization, the one where you make the baby in a petri dish. And it technically is what it is. But at least what I thought, it was a more guaranteed way of having a kid. But little did I know that it actually takes 2.5 times of this procedure to get pregnant, which is crazy because I think on most average it's like $30,000 to make this thing happen. And here's the thing, Cherry has Kaiser insurance, and moving on to IVF, she switched her insurances because this particular insurance would cover it. Little do we know that our insurance actually wouldn't cover it.
Not all of it. Everything was so expensive from doing the procedures. When you actually go in to do IVF, they do multiple testings, ultrasounds, blood tests, and then on top of it, you have to do all of these medications to help stimulate the production of the eggs and just to get your body ready, because eventually you're trying to make about like 10 to 15, if not more, eggs so that you have a higher chance of getting it fertilized. So all of that together costs a ton of money.
I'm saying the reason why it wasn't covered is because in the insurance, which is why you kind of have to read the fine print, even though the fine print wasn't really presented to us until after we investigated it, was that you have to be 37 years old. She's not. And then you have to have 6 failed attempts of IUI. Or whatever procedure prior to IVF. And so unfortunately we didn't qualify for it to be covered, but I guess silver lining was we were surprised that some of the medications were covered.
So our IVF journey actually wasn't so ideal. You would think that everything would run so smoothly because of how expensive everything is, but yeah, it wasn't for us. For instance, when we had to get the medications, there was like a rush in order to get, I believe there was like 3 or 4 of them, but the most memorable medication that gave us a headache was something called Gonal F. This particular medication is really expensive. It runs anywhere between $10,000 to $15,000 without insurance. And aside from that, all of the medications are actually needing to be delivered to the client, and it's very timely. So it's supposed to be received at a specific date, a specific time, and if you don't get it, it screws up the whole process. So with the Gonal F, we actually didn't get it, and we were going to start our treatments 2 days after.
So that was definitely a headache because, again, when you're on a time schedule, you're just hoping, or rather relying on the pharmacy to be able to deliver all the things that you need in order for you to start the procedure. So when that didn't happen, I ended up just kind of being resourceful as I can. I ended up calling the local Walgreens pharmacy and asking if he had a specific medication. So lo and behold, there's one Walgreens in San Francisco that had it, and she herself was just asking us, this is not covered, because it was literally like a $12,000 bill that we were paying at a Walgreens. So she herself was just very surprised that we were paying this particular medication out of our pocket.
And dealing with the medications wasn't even the biggest headache of them all. The biggest one was actually when my doctor, after having to go through the whole procedure of getting the medications, doing the actual implant, and then having your blood tested, we were told that we weren't pregnant. Knowing that after having to go through all of the medications, the appointments, just emotionally and then mentally and then physically. It was just so draining. And so to be told that we weren't pregnant, it was kind of like a shocker to me, but being a nurse, I feel like I deal with shock on a daily basis. And so I'm just like, well, I guess we're gonna have to try again at some other point. During this time, we were actually getting ready to go to our friend's wedding in Hawaii. So there were two mindsets that we were gonna have.
So if we were to get pregnant, we would go to our friend's wedding in Hawaii with like a very like secret, celebration mode, like, hey, yo, we're pregnant. Or we go into Hawaii not being pregnant, but still being happy for our friends and then celebrating the out of it.
Like hella, like really, really hard.
Hence the photo, because we were told that we weren't pregnant. And so we're just drinking, doing all that good stuff.
And so a week after that, when we came back, I didn't get my period.
And she was having a hard time pooing.
Like uber constipated. You're on vacation and you're eating everything. And so I was backed up to kingdom come. It was not good.
So we ended up scheduling an appointment back at the doctor's and come the ultrasound.
Yeah, so they basically skipped doing another blood test because they were like, oh, that's so strange. You haven't had your period in the last 3 weeks, or I think it was 4 weeks now. And so they decided to do like a straight up ultrasound. And so JJ and I had gone for an actual visit with the ultrasound tech. It wasn't even the physician. And so she's like, she doesn't even know or like has read our chart. And so she sticks the probe up me and, I'm looking at the screen because you're able to see that at the same time during the procedure. And the ultrasound tech then told us, oh, the reason why you're not on your period is because you're actually pregnant and you're pregnant with twins. And at that moment in time, I know I freaked out and I started crying.
Insert video.
No, you're fine. You're welcome to have all the emotions. Sorry.
So after the ultrasound tech told us that we were pregnant with twins, we were so excited. We were getting our house ready for twins. We were thinking of nicknames for them. It was crazy. We were already 10 weeks pregnant and with the twins, and we thought that, this is it. This is going to be our life. We're going to have multiples in our lives. And so we were planning for that. But then at the 12-week mark, that's when we were actually told that one of the twins didn't make it.
So when you are pregnant, people tell you to not share this news until your 12th week mark. And this is when you're actually out of your first trimester. It's because anything can happen within that first trimester. And unfortunately, there are people who've lost their pregnancy due to whatever reason. And so prior to our 12th week, we had actually a October birthday dinner. And I was telling Cherry, I was like, yo, I think this is probably a good time to tell my family. And this is like the 10th week mark that we have twins. And, call it what it is, her mother instinct or whatever. But Cherry was like, no, I think we should actually wait until our 12th week. And I even made a video because I knew that for my birthday that I was hosting at our place, I wanted to kind of trick people and showing a trailer for a video project that I was working on, and then cut into this video that kind of introduces, the twins. But on that day where I was going to have that party, when I was going to announce this and show this video to all our friends and family, we had that appointment, and unfortunately, we lost that twin.
And it was definitely difficult. I just remember feeling shocked at the beginning, but I think my background as a nurse, I'm just able to see it for what it is and be thankful and blessed that we still have the other baby that's still doing okay.
So despite hearing the news early that day in our appointment that we lost the twin, I didn't have like a backup video that I produced. And so during that night when I showed our friends our little like baby announcement video, when that second pair of shoes dropped, of course, everyone was like screaming. Everyone was super happy for us.
Everything changes every which way. You got to hold on to what you need.
That was good. And so when after the video played and everyone kind of like applause has died down, I was even like, okay, hold up. I ended up pulling the rug out of them because I had to tell them that we lost that twin earlier today. And yeah, I mean, it sucked. And so, of course, like, I was emotional, and, you know, just to lose, again, something that you wanted it's always going to be difficult, you know, when that happened.
And here we are in Sausalito at Cavallo Point, celebrating our baby moon and looking forward to the journey that we have ahead of ourselves.
I'm excited to be sharing with people who are following this channel. Of course, baby gear reviews and all that stuff and all the cool tech gadgets. The best resource so far has just been friends telling us, hey, this is what worked for me. Hey, you should try this out. You should check this out. And so I think for us, we just want to be able to share that specific information in a popular video format. But also what we discovered is Montessori. It's like a specific way of raising children. And so we've been looking up and reading up a lot about it. And we want to be an additional resource for those who are looking into that same method of raising a child.
I'm excited to share my experiences as a first-time pregnant woman and all that I've learned and will continue to learn. So hopefully this will help other women out there as well.
Thank you guys for watching.
And see you guys on our next video. Bye!
All the cool YouTube people do that.
I don't know about it. I'm too sweaty for this.
Cam cuts!